Welcome, listeners, to the BizBlend podcast where hustle meets heart and balance meets business. And we also sip on strategy, stir in mindset, and serve up bold business conversations all for you. Today's episode, listeners, is about a work revolution that has been quietly reshaping how we view success. Working fully part time without quite quitting. And to help us understand this, we have Lindsay Barnett. Let me introduce a bit about her with all of you. She is an executive coach, HR consultant, and former professor of organizational culture at USC with 2 decades of experience in both Fortune 500 giants and scrappy startups. But what sets Lindsay apart, listeners, is her deep understanding of how to work smarter while also living fully. A philosophy born out of her own journey, navigating burnout, family life, and the ever evolving world of work. So, if you have ever wondered or you have this question in your mind popping up, that can I show up powerfully at work without being consumed or eaten by it? You are in the right place, my friend. So, with that, let's go and dive deep into this conversation. Lindsay, welcome to the show, and it is such an honor to have you with us.
Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction, and I am so happy to be here today.
That is great, great, Lindsay. Okay, so let's talk about working fully part time. So, what exactly? I mean, how do you explain this, and how is it different? From just probably optimizing or strategically reducing hours or quite quitting.
Yeah, so for me, and just to come back a little bit to where I even came up with this term of working fully part time. So I actually had the great privilege to be able to work part time for a couple of years in a fairly senior role too. And it really reshaped the way that I thought about work. And a lot of it had to do with how I thought about the shift from the commonly held term, which is work life balance, to really work life harmony. And so, fully part time means
Mhm.
two things. One, I recognize that work is just part of my life, part of the time. Yes, we spend a disproportionate amount of time at work, but it still is only part of who I am. The second piece of it, which is the fully part, is that
Mm.
I can really flow with my work, with my life, to be fully present wherever I'm needed at the time. So I'm not
Mhm.
trying to really say, okay, these hours I am putting on this identity and it's only for this time. And, these hours I'm in this identity and it's only for this time. How can I be a little bit more fluid across all of that while still recognizing that work is just part of my life?
Mm. That it definitely looks like a mindset shift because it's just not about the number of hours, but it's about presence and then also boundaries, which I think
Yeah.
definitely is the need of the hour. So thank you for explaining that, Lindsay. And now um, let's try to look from the HR lens and your personal experience. So how exactly did you arrive at this? And what was that journey like? I think would love to know.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I shifted to part-time. This was shortly after the pandemic when things were opening up, but I still had 2 young elementary school aged children and was just trying to navigate part-time school or Zoom school and then a full-time job. Um, and so I shifted into the part-time role because I really was looking at how do I get more hours back in my week to meet these other needs in my life. But what was really interesting for me is that as I worked with coaching clients at the time, I realized that a lot of them were taking some of the very same strategies that I was using to really try to prevent myself from being a workaholic again, to find
Mhm.
more balance, to create more presence, and they were doing it while still working full time. So
Okay.
it made me realize it's not just, as you said, it's not just about the hours that we work. That is certainly one component of it, but it's also about how do we flow and refill our energy? How do we stay present? How do we create boundaries to avoid energy leakage? So there were a lot of things that I was realizing as I was working with my coaching clients that, for me, it was helpful to have the part-time schedule, but
Mhm.
I didn't need to work part-time hours, right? I could embrace this way of working with whatever hours that I worked.
That's quite a journey, quite a realization, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and I guess my next question, I believe, it's more relevant in the post-pandemic workplace. Where and this has personally happened with me before I quit my corporate career. I left it behind like a year back,
Yeah.
but flexibility often still clashes with outdated expectations. So, from your perspective, Lindsay, how can leaders support team members who want to work this way without seeing it as a lack of ambition?
And that is you hit the nail on the the head, Sana. There is a lot of what I call attribution bias around flexible working. So, you know, the unconscious bias, attribution bias oftentimes shows up for leaders as if somebody doesn't want to work full time or needs to work flexibly, that perhaps they're lazy or they're not a hard worker or they're not motivated. Um, I actually feel like if you can, for leaders to actually move past that bias, if an individual is coming to you with some solutions for ways that they think that they can work smarter, better, more productively, that is actually a great sign that they're really thinking about how they work best, the things that will support and sustain them. Because to your point, the kinda outdated ways of working is really thinking, "Oh, between 9 and 5, people do their best work." But
Yeah.
in reality, if you talk to so many people, where are your most creative ideas? They're in the shower. They're driving somewhere. It's actually when we are often in a state of rest or not working so hard that we really get creative and innovative and in a place of creating more value for ourselves and for others. So to me, a leader who can really lean into someone who is willing to be creative and solutions oriented
Mhm.
is a path to better outcomes. By all means, leaders need for their own sanity probably the ability to check in with people, to drive clarity around what those outcomes look like. What are the conditions of success? They need to be empathetic negotiators where they really can say, okay, I like your idea, but let's try it for a week and see how it goes versus just saying, okay, fine, part time, all the time, all the way, right? So in my book, Working Hell to Well, I actually talk a lot about the key skills for managers as well as ways that people can be really creative with flexible working to find different ways to either get your leader supportive of it by either running some sample experiments, um, or just knowing what it would entail to create a flexible working arrangement for yourself in an organization. So there's a lot of different ways to create what what people need and to support people who need more flexibility.
Right. And how does this all translate? Because you have worked in um, enterprise and corporate settings, and then in the startup settings as well. How exactly would this translate in both of these situations? Because I'm not sure how would I say to a boss in a huge MNC or enterprise that I'm not really having any ideas right now. They come back later. I mean, that will be a bit challenging. So, how would you suggest that?
Yeah, so it may be easiest to just start with with my situation and what I did. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing was I greatly benefited from the fact that my organization actually had part-time as an option. So not all organizations do. There are a lot of different types of flexible work arrangements. Um, but, so you may wanna start with what's even on option, right? Does my
Yeah.
organization support 40-hour weeks? Taking the more common example, but maybe they'd be open to 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, right? So sometimes that could be an option. Are they open to job share? Are they open to part-time? So you almost first need to start with what's even available to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at a minimum, most organizations can support flexible work hours, right? It doesn't take too much to say, hey, instead of working 9 to 5, can I work 6 to 3? Right? You're still there for a core part of the day, but, a lot of what helped me prepare to propose part-time was a prior organization I worked at had
Mm-hmm.
a flexible work arrangement proposal document, and a lot of it really was thinking about what is it that you want regardless of the what, how is this going to work for you and how is this going to work for the organization? And it really invited a lot of conversation around how do we make this work for all of us? So that when I went in to request part-time, I really went in to talk to my boss with, "Hey, I've thought of these 5 options. Option 1, here are some of the pros and here are some of the cons. Here's option
Mm-hmm.
2, here are some of the pros, here are some of the cons, here's how I think it could work." And so, fortunately, I had a strong relationship with my boss at the time, and, he was open to having the conversation. He could have very easily said, "Nope, none of them work," but when you go in with a few solutions that you've clearly thought about and thought about the ramifications of them, it's a lot harder to just say a flat out no, right? Because
Yeah.
you're opening the door to negotiating. It's not just, "Hey, can I work part-time?" That's a yes, no question usually, right?
Yes. Right.
So, that's really where I'd start. really doing the deep thinking about what does this proposal work look like and what's the win-win for everybody. Does that
Mm.
help?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is because I personally struggled with this quite a number of times, especially in the startup settings. So
Yes.
absolutely makes sense. And what would I say to professionals who fear stepping back might impact their long-term growth or credibility at work? Someone like me who is now right now taking a break. I had this confusion a year back, but I still took that chance. So
Yeah.
what would you say?
So I would say a couple things. One, you are taking a chance, and it does take courage to do this. Um, the thing that I'm hoping for at some point in the future, there are more of us who are courageously advocating for what we need, whether it's a flexible work arrangement or better work-life harmony, whatever it is, so there's less political or social capital required of each of us individually because the temperature in the water all around us is more accommodating for that. Um, but there are a couple things that I think can support people. The first one is, really having an active network. So the m the more you have a network and a web of people to support you, the
Mhm.
easier it is to kind of find some flow when you need it. So, take for example, if you are stepping back, right, there might be some people who are impacted by that. Some people may be positively impacted, some people may have to take on your work, right? So, really being mindful of what does this mean for others if I'm stepping back consciously? And it may
Mhm.
mean that you may need to get passed up for a promotion or a really cool project and whatnot. But if you are clear in what it is that you want and need, that trade-off can be a little bit more comfortable, right? Because you're very clear in your purpose. And by having an expansive network, you may be stepping back in this job, but there may be a time where you are feeling ready to step back in and step back up and go back full time. Having the network to share that with, to say, "What do you think? What do you see for me?" Depending on the size of the organization, it could result in finding a different job elsewhere. So, in my example of part-time, I really needed the part-time at a certain time in my life. But after a couple years, I was starting to feel like, all right, like kids are back in school full time. That was my primary purpose in going
Mhm.
part-time. Are there other jobs that I can start looking for either within my company or outside of my company? So there is there is an element of risk for sure, but I think if people are clear in their purpose and, intentional about building and sustaining their network, I hate to use this term, but it will all work itself out in the long run. I really believe that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Oh, okay, okay. That's and the fear is real. I have gone through that. I hear it all the time. Um, yeah. So uh, it's more of as you rightfully mentioned about the work-life harmony, because work-life balance is something I think it cannot be um tied together in every kind of situation. So it's more about the harmony with a bit of mindfulness and of course, networking. And Lindsay, um, any personal, like, how do you personally structure your life and career today to protect your energy while still showing up every day, of course, with excellence?
Yeah, it's hard. It really it's not I share all these things because it's hard-earned learning and
Mm.
it takes practice. There are weeks where I feel my workaholic ways creeping back in.
Mm.
And then, a lot of times I just need to have that mindfulness to be able to notice that they're coming back in. And once I notice it, I have kind of my handful of practices that, okay, like alarm is ringing, gotta kick
Yeah.
back up, right?
Yeah.
Like, where are we at with meditation? Where are we at with yoga? Where are we at with connecting with friends and, building relationships? Um, where am I at with I talk in my book about these three energies that I've found to be very supportive. One of them I just mentioned, connection energy.
Mhm.
Another one is creative energy. So, are there things that I can do that can be refueling, whatever that creative energy looks like? And then the last one is completion energy. So, sometimes when we're in a state of work where we're on a really big project or
Mhm.
we've got a big, imminent deadline, it feels like you're just on the treadmill. And so sometimes tapping into some form of completion energy can be satisfying and nourishing for our resilience. I mentioned this in my book, and I joke a lot with people, but laundry is incredibly satisfying to me. And I know it seems like it's like a chore, but I have found a way to reframe it for myself that it is actually energy producing because I feel like I've completed something. You know, there's the old adage of make your bed every morning, right? So you get
Mhm.
this source of satisfaction with completing something that day. So for me, I've really gotten, just to kind of summarize, the habits that have supported me are: one, noticing when I'm drifting from my North Star, and two, really having a set of practices that I can turn to when I am noticing I need to get back on the right path.
Since you mentioned about laundry, sometimes, in fact, cleaning the room or decluttering our closet, or cooking something special for us, maybe, or for the family. I think, these are some of the small activities where we can kind of refuel our souls and, that energy within us.
Yeah, yeah, like, cooking is such a great source of creative energy.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Great, great, Lindsay. This was such a heartwarming, informative, pragmatic conversation. So, of course, if our listeners would like to get a hold of your book and connect with you, what will be the best way to do that?
Yeah. So I have a website, workinghelltoworkingwell.com, which is the book website. It has a lot of extra resources, as well as you can find me for my coaching and consulting at barnettcoaching.com, Also very active on LinkedIn, so it's another great way to find me and stay in touch. So, yeah, lots of ways to find me. My invitation, if you have any takeaway from today, is to find just one thing and, that's going to help support your resilience, your quality of life, whatever that is. Find that one thing and just commit to it.
Hey, great. I'll make sure to have all the links mentioned in the show notes. And Lindsay, thank you so much for reminding us that, or helping us working our way from hell to heaven, and for reminding us that presence, not permanence, is what creates impact. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. All the best to you.
Thank you, Lindsay, and to all of my listeners. Your worth isn't tied to how many hours you log or you slog. It's how you lead, live, and blend that purpose into your everyday. So until next time, keep blending business with life, but of course, gracefully. And make sure to connect with Lindsay and get a hold of her book. And I'll have all the links in the show notes for you. And this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.